Thunder hit the house like a fist. Mia's small hands clutched my shirt as I carried her into the living room. Outside, wind shoved rain across the street and the oak in my front yard creaked and groaned. A flash turned everything white. The lightning didn't just strike the tree. It split it. Wood tore with a crack that shook the windows. Half the trunk slumped toward the driveway. Mia whimpered and pressed her face into my shoulder. It's okay, I told her more out of habit than certainty. Then the doorbell buzzed. Long, urgent, wrong. I set Mia on the couch, grabbed the flashlight, and opened the front door. Rain slapped my cheeks. Ava Sinclair stood on my porch, soaked through. Her hair clung to her face. Water streamed off her coat. She hugged a waterproof portfolio to her ribs like it was the only solid thing left. At work, Ava could cut through a room with one sentence. Here, she looked like someone who'd been running for miles. "Ethan," she said, "can I come in?" "Ava." "Are you okay?" My voice came out quieter than I meant. She stepped inside and looked back into the dark before I shut the door quick as a flinch. The kitchen light flickered once. Ava swallowed and spoke fast, low. "I'm pregnant." Her hand moved to her stomach, protective without thinking. "And the board wants me out," she added. "They're calling it restructuring." My throat tightened. I thought of Gordon Vale's polite smile, the way it never reached his eyes. I thought of every time I'd apologized for leaving early because Mia needed me. "That's discrimination," I said. "They can't fire you for that." Ava's gaze didn't blink. "They will. I have evidence they planned it, but I need help making it matter." My phone vibrated in my pocket. I glanced down. From Gordon Vale, subject, "Do not make this worse." Ava watched my thumb hover over the screen. Her lips parted, then closed. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere in the storm, distant but getting closer. The screen's glow lit Ava's face, pale and exhausted. Behind us, Mia shifted on the couch and murmured, half asleep, "Daddy, who's that?" If you're enjoying this story, please like and subscribe. Before I go any further, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. Mia's eyes opened to thin slits, the kind she used when she wanted to pretend she was asleep but still catch everything. She pushed herself upright on the couch, hair sticking out in soft spikes. "Daddy?" she whispered, then pointed at Ava, like Ava might vanish if she looked away. "Who is that?" Ava's shoulders tightened. The rain had darkened her coat to near black, and water pooled on my entry mat. She looked out of place in my small living room, like a portrait that had slipped from a gallery wall and landed in a home with scuffed baseboards and toy blocks under the coffee table. "This is Ava," I said, keeping my voice steady. "She's a friend from work." Mia sat up straighter. "She's pretty." Ava blinked, caught off guard. "Hi, Mia." Mia's gaze traveled down to the portfolio pressed against Ava's side. "Is that a book?" "It's..." Ava glanced at me. "It's paperwork." Mia nodded like she understood, then tilted her head. "Are you my daddy's girlfriend?" I felt heat rush up my neck. Ava's cheeks colored, and for a second she looked younger, almost embarrassed. The storm boomed again, saving us from answering. "Mia," I said, reaching for the blanket and tucking it around her. "How about hot chocolate, the kind with the tiny marshmallows?" Her eyes lit up. "Yes." I guided Ava toward the kitchen. It was narrow, more hallway than room, but it was warm and the sound of the rain softened there. I set the flashlight on the counter and found the matches. The overhead light flickered like it was thinking about giving up. Ava set the portfolio on the table with care, like it might shatter. Her hands were trembling, not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. "You should take your coat off," I said. She hesitated, then slid it from her shoulders. Underneath was a blouse that had once been crisp. Now it clung to her, damp and wrinkled. She brushed wet hair back from her forehead, and I saw the fatigue underneath the makeup she wore at work. The perfect eyeliner, the sharp lipstick, the expression that kept people at a distance. Tonight, it was all softened by rain and exhaustion. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. The kettle clicked as I turned the stove on. "You have a condo. You could have called security." You could have gone to a hotel. Ava's eyes lifted, and there was something in them that made me slow down. Not fear, exactly. More like someone who had already tried all the obvious doors and found them locked. My building lost power, she said, and the elevators stopped. Security is contracted. They report to the board, not me. She let out a short breath. I was in the garage sitting in my car, and I realized I couldn't even get into my own place without someone logging it. That word hit me. Logging. I poured cocoa powder into a mug and stirred it into hot milk. So you drove here? Yes, and they emailed me. I held up my phone. Ava's gaze sharpened, and the old Ava flashed through for a split second the CEO who could read a room and name every threat. Gordon. I watched her swallow. Her hand slid over her stomach again, slow and protective. How far does this go? I asked. Ava unlatched the portfolio. Inside were neatly stacked papers clipped and tabbed with colored flags. Meeting notes, calendar prints, email chains with names redacted. There was a smell of paper and faint perfume. They started moving pieces months ago, she said. At first I thought it was normal pushback. I changed the roadmap. I cut contracts that did not make sense. I refused to chase trends. The board complained. That's their job. Then I told my chief of staff I was pregnant, and within a week Gordon asked me if I planned to step back. My jaw tightened. Did you tell him no? I laughed, she said, but it was not a real laugh. I told him this company was built by people who work, not by people who smile for investors. I told him I was not going anywhere. The kitchen light blinked. The refrigerator hummed louder, then softer like it was breathing. Ava flipped to a document and slid it toward me. This is the draft they plan to use. They call it succession stabilization. They will say the market needs continuity. They will say the company needs a leader who can travel without limitation and be fully available. My eyes scanned the paragraph. The words were polite. The meaning was not. I imagined Ava sitting at the head of the conference table while men in suits talked around her, describing her life as a liability. That's discrimination. I said again, but it sounded thinner this time, like a label you put on a bruise, not a cure. Ava's fingers tapped the paper once. They will never say it is about pregnancy. They will say it is about perception. Her voice dropped. They will say I am a risk. I thought of my own file at work, my performance reviews, all the little notes I had tried to control, came in late due to school nurse call, missed the first 10 minutes of the client's sync, asked to reschedule because of a pediatric appointment. In my head, I saw those lines rearranged into a story I did not want anyone else to write. Mia padded into the kitchen, dragging her blanket. Is it ready? I set the mug in front of her and watched her blow on the surface like she was cooling lava. The normalness of it made the air in my chest ache. Ava's expression softened as she watched Mia. She's 5. 5, I said. Big opinions, small shoes. Mia's eyes moved to Ava's hair. It fell in damp waves down her back, still somehow elegant in a way my life never was. How do you make it like that? Ava touched it absently. Practice. I want it, Mia said. Like a princess. Ava's mouth twitched. I can try someday. Mia beamed, then took a sip of hot chocolate and sighed like an old woman. Good. She climbed back onto the couch with her mug in both hands. The flashlight threw a cone of light across the living room, catching the edges of toys and picture frames. Ava sat at my kitchen table, shoulders still tense. Ethan, she said quietly, I know this puts you in a position. I leaned on the counter and kept my voice even. You mean a position where I help you and risk my job, or I do nothing and pretend I never saw any of this? Ava's eyes held mine. You are a single father. It was not a question. It was a fact she had somehow known without my ever telling her. My throat tightened anyway. I don't talk about it at work, I said. Neither do I, she replied. For different reasons, same result. I sat across from her. The wood of the chair creaked under my weight. I didn't know you were alone. Ava's fingers paused on a spreadsheet. I don't advertise it. She glanced toward the living room. People decide what you are worth based on what you lack. The power cut out completely. The overhead light died. The stove light vanished. The refrigerator stopped humming. For a second, the house felt like it had been unplugged from the world. The only sounds were rain hitting glass and Mia's small spoon clinking against her mug. I stood and found the candles in the junk drawer. When I struck a match, the flame looked fragile against the dark. I lit 3 candles and set them on the table. The warm glow gave Ava's face softer edges. It also revealed the shadow under her eyes that bright office lights had hidden. She took a breath, then opened a folder marked with a sticker that said IP. This is why it is happening so fast, she said. Inside were patent filings, legal summaries, signatures. My eyes skimmed the first page and stuck on her name. These are in your name, I said. Ava nodded once. The core. The algorithm that makes our platform different. Her voice was steady now, the way it got when she had decided something. The board wants to move our technology into a separate entity. Then they can sell it. They can claim it is an efficiency play. They can walk away with the most valuable piece and leave the rest behind. A chill spread across my skin that had nothing to do with wet clothes. You think they are planning to sell the company? Ava's mouth tightened. I think they are planning to sell what matters. And I am the person standing in the doorway. I looked down at the pages again. The language was careful. Everything was careful. Even the betrayal. Mia's voice floated in from the living room. Daddy, the tree is scary. I got up and crossed the room. The split oak was visible through the window, jagged like broken teeth. I crouched beside Mia and smoothed her hair back. It's just a tree, I whispered. It can't come inside. Mia frowned. Can the thunder come inside? I kissed her forehead. No. Behind me, Ava stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. She watched me with an expression that looked like longing and fear had decided to share the same face. When Mia finally drifted back under the blanket, her breathing slow and deep, I returned to the kitchen. Ava had lined the papers into neat stacks. She had the same focus she had in a board meeting, except here it was lit by candlelight instead of a projector. How did you get all this? I asked. Ava's eyes stayed on the documents. I kept copies. I noticed patterns. Meeting invites moved without explanation. Conversations that stopped when I walked in. My access to certain reports delayed by hours. She looked up. I was trained to believe it was my imagination, that I was being emotional. The word landed between us like an insult someone else had spoken. I'm not emotional, Ava said, voice low. I'm observant. I nodded, and careful. Yes. Her fingers tightened around the edge of a page. But careful is not the same as safe. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Why come to me? Ava's gaze held mine for a beat. Candlelight flickered across her eyes. Because you don't flatter, you don't angle. When you disagree with me, you say it. When you think I am wrong, you look me in the eye. She paused, and because you lived nearby and the storm forced a decision. I heard the second part more than the first. Forced a decision. It sounded like something I understood too well. The rain kept coming. A branch scraped along the window, a slow dragging sound that made my shoulders tighten. Ava glanced toward the hallway. Do you have somewhere I can change? Bathroom's right there, I said. I can find you something dry. I dug through my dresser and found an old college shirt and a pair of sweatpants that were too big for her. When she came out, the shirt hung loose over her, the collar slipping off one shoulder. Her hair was towel-dried and tousled. She looked less like a headline and more like a person who could sit on the floor and build towers of blocks. I look ridiculous, she said. You look comfortable, I replied. Her lips curved just barely. No one has ever said that to me. The air shifted. Not romantic exactly, just closer. I gestured toward the hallway. You can take my room. Ava shook her head immediately. No, this is your home. Take it, I said. Mia wakes up early. If you sleep on the couch, you won't sleep at all. Ava's eyes moved toward the living room where Mia was curled into a small ball under her blanket. Does she always sleep out here? When she gets scared, I said, storms do it. Ava's hand pressed lightly to her stomach again. Storms do a lot of things. She moved down the hallway, then paused at the bedroom door. Ethan, she said softly, I am not asking you to be reckless. I sat on the couch and pulled a thin throw blanket over my legs. I know. Ava looked like she wanted to say more, then she nodded and stepped inside the bedroom. The door closed with a gentle click. The house settled into dark silence punctuated by rain. I stared at the ceiling, listening to Mia's quiet breaths and the distant rumble that rolled like heavy furniture across the sky. My phone lit up again. Not an email this time. A text message from an unknown number. You are making a mistake. A second message followed immediate. Help her, and you will be terminated for cause. The screen dimmed, then brightened again in my hand like it was breathing with me. You are making a mistake. Help her, and you will be terminated for cause. I sat very still on the couch. The storm pressed its wet palm against every window. A branch scratched the glass with a slow, patient sound, the kind you hear in movies right before something goes wrong. I turned the phone over face down on my thigh, as if that could erase what it said. In the hallway, Ava's door stayed shut. In the living room, Mia exhaled softly into her blanket, her little chest rising and falling in the candlelight. I watched her for a long moment, the way a parent watches a child, when the world feels unstable, like the only true thing left is that breathing. I slid the phone into my pocket and stood. The kitchen smelled faintly of cocoa and melted wax. I blew out the last candle, then checked the locks twice without meaning to. When I lay back down, my eyes stayed open. Every time thunder rolled, my mind replayed Gordon's subject line, then the unknown number's threat. For cause. 2 words that could turn my life into an eviction notice. At some point, the rain softened. Morning arrived gray and thin, as if the sky had used up all its color overnight. I woke to Mia's voice and the sound of water somewhere it should not have been. Not inside the house, thank God, but outside. A steady rush, like a faucet, left running. Daddy, Mia said, standing beside the couch with her blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a cape. The street is gone. I pushed myself up and went to the front window. The oak lay split and broken across the yard, one half angled toward the driveway like a fallen giant. Beyond it, the road shimmered not with rain, but with moving brown water. It slid past parked cars and swallowed the curb. My phone buzzed against my hip. One alert after another. Flash flood warning. Avoid travel. Seek higher ground. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. Ava stood in the hallway wearing my old shirt and sweatpants, hair messy from sleep. For a second, she looked like someone who had woken up in the wrong life. Then her eyes focused, taking in the water outside the split tree, the quiet in my shoulders. We are cut off, she said. Looks like it. Mia pressed her face to the glass. Can we go to school in a boat? Not today, I told her. Ava's hand went to her stomach again, a reflex I was starting to recognize before she did it. Does your neighborhood flood often? Not like this, I said. Arlington gets heavy rain, but this is something else. Mia turned toward Ava as if Ava had the authority to rewrite weather. Can you do my hair? Ava blinked, surprised by the question. Your hair? Mia nodded fiercely. Like yours, with the twisty thing. Ava's gaze softened. Bring a brush. Mia ran to her room and returned with a pink brush and a bag of hair ties. She climbed onto a kitchen chair and sat very still, chin lifted proud like she was about to be crowned. Ava stood behind her, fingers gentle as she worked through tangles. Mia winced once, then decided she did not want to admit it. You are brave, Ava said quietly. Mia smiled. I am. I filled the coffee maker, hands moving on autopilot, watching them from the counter. Ava's posture had changed. She was careful with Mia in a way I did not expect from a woman who could dismantle an executive argument in 30 seconds. She leaned in, her voice soft, asking Mia about her favorite color, her teacher's name, the stuffed animal tucked under her arm. Mia talked nonstop. Ava listened like it mattered. The smell of coffee bloomed through the kitchen, warm and grounding. For a moment, the storm felt far away, as if the world outside belonged to someone else. Then my phone chimed again. This time it was not an alert. It was an email. From Board Executive Office, subject Emergency Executive Session. My stomach tightened. I opened it. The words were clinical, polite, sharp at the edges. An emergency meeting would be held to address leadership stability and organizational direction as soon as travel conditions allowed. Ava stepped closer, still holding Mia's braid in one hand. Read it. I angled the screen toward her. She scanned it fast, and her face hardened, as if a mask had clicked into place. They are accelerating, she said. Because of last night, I replied. Because of your cooperation, she corrected, and her tone carried something like regret, though her eyes stayed steady. Mia turned her head as far as the braid allowed. Are you mad? Ava's expression softened instantly. No, sweetheart, I'm thinking. Mia nodded, as if that made perfect sense. I like my hair. Ava tied the end of the braid and smiled. You should. You look strong. Mia hopped down and ran to the mirror in the hallway, admiring herself with a serious face. I am strong. Ava watched her go, then looked back at me. We do not have much time. We are stuck here, I said, gesturing toward the water outside. Stuck can be useful, Ava replied, if we use it. We cleared the kitchen table. Mia helped by moving crayons and a stack of library books out of the way. Ava opened her portfolio again and began laying out documents with the same precision she used at work. I brought my laptop from my bag, the one I usually saved for after Mia went to bed. The storm had left the house humid and smelling faintly of wet wood. The power came and went, but the wireless stayed alive, hanging on by stubbornness and luck. Ava pulled up an email chain on her phone and slid her notes toward me. Start with the timeline, she said. Find the first moment the board's language shifted. I opened my calendar and searched for meetings with Gordon. It felt strange mining my own life for evidence, like I was building a case against a reality I had thought was solid. Mia climbed onto a chair beside us and began sorting papers into piles based on the color of the tabs. This one is blue, she declared. This one is green. Ava leaned closer to her. Blue is important. Green is also important. Mia nodded solemnly, then pushed a stack toward me. Here. I tried not to smile. Thank you, assistant. Mia puffed out her chest. I help. Ava flipped through a set of printed board minutes and stopped, her finger landing on a paragraph. Here. She turned the page toward me. I read it, then read it again. The date at the top was 3 months ago. The phrase on the page was innocuous preliminary discussion of organizational restructure, evaluation of leadership succession options. But my eyes snagged on something else. A line in my own memory. That had been the day Ava left early, walking out of a product review with her phone pressed to her ear, face unreadable. She had told the room she had a personal appointment. I looked at Ava. This was the day you left for your doctor. Ava's lips parted slightly, yes. They started talking restructure that day, I said, tapping the date. Not the week after. Not the month after. That day. Ava's face drained of color. How did they know? It was a private appointment, she whispered, more to herself than to me. I did not tell anyone on the board. I did not put details in my calendar. I told my chief of staff only that I was unavailable. The room felt smaller. Mia colored quietly, tongue stuck out in concentration, oblivious to the way the air had shifted. I kept my voice low. Is your chief of staff loyal? Ava's eyes flashed. Yes. Then someone saw something I said. Or someone listened. Ava's gaze drifted toward the front window where rainwater still moved along the road like a slow river. I have always assumed the board was impatient, that they were controlling, that they were entitled. She looked back at the paper. I did not assume they were watching. I opened my laptop and logged into our company email, hands steady because they had to be. I searched for keywords in old threads. Restructure, stability, succession, continuity, investor confidence. There it was, woven into messages like thread. Not enough to scream on its own, but enough to build a pattern. Ava pointed to another document. This was sent to investors last quarter, she said. Look at the language about leadership resilience. I read it and felt heat rise in my chest. The document described leadership capacity in terms that were clearly aimed at someone without naming her. Fully available, unencumbered, consistent public presence. Ava watched my expression. They do not have to say pregnant, she said. They just have to let people imagine it. Mia slid another pile toward us. More papers. Perfect, Ava said, and there was gratitude in her voice that made Mia grin. Hours passed in fragments of coffee paper and the sound of water moving outside. The power returned for longer stretches. Ava used my charger. I used her printed notes. We worked around each other without bumping, then bumped anyway. Once our hands brushed when we reached for the same folder. Neither of us pulled away quickly. It was not a dramatic moment. It was just enough to register, then disappear back into work. Around noon, the floodwater outside slowed. The road was still covered, but the level had dropped a few inches. A car down the street sat half submerged, its tires sunk into brown water like it had stepped into mud and decided not to fight. My phone buzzed again. A message from a neighbor: roads might clear by evening. People are moving cars to higher ground. Ava read it over my shoulder. Her breath stirred the hair at my temple. Evening, she said softly, then morning meetings. Mia looked up from her coloring. Are you going to work? Not today, I told her. Ava turned a page and froze. Her finger landed on a printed expense report. A line item that looked normal if you wanted it to. Strategic Consulting External Advisory Review. A number large enough to matter hidden among other numbers. Yeah. What is this? She asked. I leaned in. That vendor name is new. Ava's eyes narrowed. It should not be there. I typed the vendor name into the company system and nothing came up. No onboarding, no contract file, no internal reference. Ava's jaw tightened. If the board approved this, there should be paperwork. Unless someone kept it off the books, I said. Mia swung her legs under the chair. Daddy, can I have a snack? I stood up, grateful for a simple request. Yes, apples or crackers. Both, she said, because she was 5 and believed in abundance. I brought her snacks and sat back down, my gaze returning to the expense line. My pocket felt heavy with my phone, like the threats inside it weighed more than a device should. Ava leaned back in her chair and pressed her fingertips to her eyes for a second. When she lowered her hand, her composure had returned, but the softness was gone. They were not only preparing to remove me, she said. They were preparing to move something without me noticing. I thought of the unknown number's warning. I thought of Gordon's subject line. I thought of the way Ava had looked over her shoulder when she stepped into my house, as if the dark itself had ears. I slid my phone out and showed Ava the texts. She read them and something cold settled behind her eyes. Not fear. Calculation. They want you frightened, she said. They succeeded, I replied. Ava's gaze held mine. Frightened people make mistakes. Careful people do not. Mia crunched an apple slice and watched us. Are you two working? Yes, I said. What are you making? Ava answered before I could. We are making the truth easier to see. Mia nodded as if that sounded like a normal adult job, then went back to her snack. Ava reached for another folder and slid it closer. Keep going, she said. We build the timeline. Every time they moved a meeting, every time they changed language, every time they tried to box me in. I looked down at the papers, then at the gray light outside, and I felt the day tighten around us. Not with panic, but with purpose. Somewhere beyond the flooded street, the company existed as it always had. Offices, badges, glass walls, conference rooms. People sipping coffee and pretending nothing was wrong. At my kitchen table, candle wax still dotted the surface, and Mia's crayons lay scattered like evidence of a different kind of life. Ava's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and did not flinch, but her fingers curled around the edge of the table. "It's Gordon," she said. I watched the name on her screen, then looked at the expense report again, at the missing vendor at the date that matched her doctor appointment too perfectly. Outside, the water kept sliding past, pulling leaves and small branches along with it, as if the storm was still deciding what it would take. Ava stared at the name on her screen as if she could burn a hole through it. Gordon Vale. The phone buzzed again, impatient. Ava set it on the table without answering. The vibration rattled the wood, a small, angry animal trapped under glass. Mia looked up from her crayons. "Is that your phone?" Ava's voice softened on reflex. "Yes, sweetheart." "Is it work?" Ava glanced at me, then back at Mia. "Something like that." The buzzing stopped. For 2 seconds, the kitchen was quiet except for the faint rush of water outside and the hum of my laptop fan. Then Ava's phone chimed. Not a call, an email. She opened it, and her face went still. She turned the screen toward me. From Gordon Vale, subject immediate boundaries. I read the first line and felt my throat tighten. "This is an executive matter. Your presence is inappropriate. Any further involvement will be considered misconduct." Below that was a familiar corporate smoothness, the kind that sounded reasonable until you realized it was a blade. Mentions of fiduciary duty. References to policy. A reminder that the company reserved the right to terminate employment for violations of conduct. My phone buzzed in my pocket as if it wanted to join in. Unknown number, same as last night. Last warning. I did not show it to Ava right away. I stared at the words until they blurred, then slid the phone back into my pocket. My hand felt cold. Ava's gaze moved from the email to my face. She saw something shift in me. Her eyes narrowed, not accusatory, just sharp. "They contacted you again," she said. It was a statement, not a question. I held her gaze for a beat, then pulled the phone out and placed it face up on the table. I did not hand it to her. I did not need to. Ava read it. Her lips pressed together and her nostrils flared once. It was the smallest display of anger I had seen from her, which made it more dangerous. Mia swung her legs under the chair. "Why do you look mad?" Ava leaned toward her. "I'm not mad at you. I'm thinking hard." Mia accepted that, then pointed at the stack of papers. "Are those secrets?" I exhaled a small laugh that surprised me, some of them. Mia's eyes widened with delighted horror, like spy secrets. Ava's mouth twitched, more like boring grown-up secrets. Mia frowned. Boring is still secrets. Ava reached out and slid Mia a blank sheet of paper. "You can make your own secret plan. Draw something that makes you happy." Mia grabbed a crayon and went back to work, satisfied. Ava's focus snapped back to the table. "Gordon is trying to isolate me," she said. "He wants me alone so he can control the story, and he wants me scared enough to back off," I said. Ava looked at the expense report again, then at my laptop. "Open the vendor profile." Even if it is hidden, the accounting system keeps traces. I typed in the vendor name again, slower this time, trying variations. A partial match popped up in a different database, a payment ledger used by finance. The vendor existed there like a ghost that only appeared under certain lighting. Ava leaned closer, her shoulder almost touching mine. I could smell the faint detergent of my old shirt on her mixed with something expensive that had survived the rain. The ledger showed a mailing address in D.C., a suite number, a phone number with no contact name. I clicked into the attachment list. One file appeared, a single-page invoice. No letterhead. No description beyond advisory services. A signature that looked like it had been drawn in a hurry. Ava's voice dropped. "This is a shell." "Maybe," I said, "or someone is sloppy." "Gordon is not sloppy," Ava replied. The water outside kept moving, but slower now. The street still looked like weak coffee, but the curb began to reappear. My phone vibrated again. This time it was my smart doorbell app. New login attempt detected. I stared at the notification. My stomach turned. I had installed that doorbell after Mia's mom left, after I realized my house sounded different at night when it was just the two of us. It had been a comfort. A small eye on the porch. Now it felt like an eye pointed back at me. Ava noticed my expression. What is it? I turned the screen toward her. Her gaze sharpened. Someone is trying to access your doorbell, she said. I did not give anyone that login, I replied. Ava's hand moved to her stomach again, but this time it was slower, deliberate. She was grounding herself. Disable remote access, she said. Change the password, now. I did it with shaking fingers, forcing my hands to stay steady so Mia would not notice. I set the doorbell to local only and turned off app sharing. Then I opened the access log. 3 attempts. 2 from unknown devices. 1 from an IP address that was not in Virginia. Ava watched the log. They are not guessing, she said. They are testing, seeing what they can see. A sound came from the living room. Mia humming to herself as she drew pleased and safe and unaware. I lowered my voice. Is this still about getting you out? Ava did not answer right away. She sat down, shoulders squared, and studied the papers like they were a map. When people behave like this, she said quietly, it is because they are hiding something larger than reputation. I looked at the missing paperwork. The disguised invoice. The board minutes timed to her doctor appointment. The threats. It feels like I stepped into someone else's movie, I muttered. Ava's eyes lifted to mine. No. You stepped into their version of reality. They have been living in it for a while. My phone vibrated again, and my heart jumped before I saw it was a neighbor alert in the community group chat. Road is dropping. People moving cars to higher ground. Watch for debris. I glanced out the window. The water line was lower. A car down the street rocked slightly as the current changed. Ava followed my gaze. If the road's clear, they will call the meeting fast. I nodded. They already tried. Ava reached for her email and scrolled. They will frame it as stability. They will say it is urgent. They will aim for a vote before I can respond. I rubbed my temples. My head hurt in a way that coffee could not fix. Mia's voice floated in. Daddy, can Ava stay for dinner? My throat tightened. We will see. Mia turned her face toward Ava. I like her. Ava's expression softened so quickly it startled me. She crouched beside Mia's chair. I like you too. Mia held up her drawing. It was a stick figure with long hair next to a smaller stick figure with a bow. A third figure taller stood beside them with a big square head and a smile. That's me, Mia announced, tapping the bow. That's you, she tapped the long hair, and that's Daddy. Ava's eyes flicked to the third figure. Your daddy has a big head. Mia giggled. He thinks a lot. Ava laughed under her breath, then looked at me. The laughter faded into something gentler. For a second, the kitchen felt warmer than it had any right to. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was a direct email to me from Gordon Vale. From Gordon Vale. Subject, your employment status. My finger hovered over it. Ava's gaze was steady, but I could see tension in the way she held her shoulders. I opened the email. Mr. Brooks, your involvement in matters outside your role is noted. Continued misconduct will result in immediate action up to and including termination for cause. The words were clean. The message was filthy. My hands clenched into fists, then loosened. Ava read it over my shoulder. Her jaw tightened. He's trying to make you the example, she said. I have a kid, I replied, and my voice cracked on the last word. Ava turned fully toward me. I know. There was no pity in her eyes, only recognition. I swallowed hard. I cannot lose my job. Ava's gaze did not waver. I am not asking you to sacrifice her stability. The way she said her made me glance at Mia again. My daughter was humming coloring and chewing a cracker. Her braid had loosened a little at the crown, a soft imperfection that made her look even more like a child. Ava's voice lowered. Is there someone you trust nearby? My neighbor, I said. Mrs. Delgado. She is retired. She has watched Mia a few times when I got stuck at work. Ava nodded once. If anything escalates, Mia should not be in the middle of it. The word escalate sat heavy on my tongue. I stood and walked to the window, forcing myself to look outside like a normal person. My driveway was slick with rain. The split oak lay like a warning. Across the street, a dark sedan sat parked near the corner. It could have been anyone. It could have been a neighbor. It could have been nothing. But it had not been there yesterday. Ava came up behind me close enough that I could feel her presence without touching. "Do you recognize that car?" "No," I said. We watched it for a few seconds. No movement, no lights, just stillness. I stepped away from the window and picked up my phone. I called Mrs. Delgado. She answered on the second ring. "Ethan, honey, are you all right? I heard a tree went down." "I am okay," I said. "Mia is okay. I might need a favor later." "Of course," she replied without hesitation. "You tell me what you need." I glanced at Mia. "If the road clears and I have to go somewhere, could Mia stay with you for a bit?" "Any time," Mrs. Delgado said. "Bring her? I have soup on the stove and enough blankets to build a fort." Mia's head popped up at the word fort. I smiled, despite myself. "I will call you soon," I told Mrs. Delgado. "Be careful," she said, and the line went quiet. Ava returned to the table and tapped the expense report. "Back to this," she said, as if anchoring us to what we could control. "If the vendor is a shell, someone created it to move money without scrutiny." I sat beside her and pulled the invoice closer. I read the suite address again, then opened my browser and searched it. A virtual office company came up. Mail forwarding, temporary suites, a receptionist who answered calls with whatever business name you paid for. I showed Ava the screen. Her eyes narrowed. "So they are paying a ghost," she said, and signing it with a scribble, I added. Ava stared at the address for a long moment, then opened her own email and searched for the vendor name. Nothing. No mention in board packets. No attachments. No approvals. Her voice went calm in a way that made my skin prickle. "This is not a mistake," she said. "This is a method." Mia wandered back into the kitchen and leaned against my leg. "Can we eat now?" I glanced at the clock. The day had slipped away in paper and fear. "Yeah," I said softly, "we can eat." I pulled chicken nuggets from the freezer because that was what existed in my house, and because normal food felt like a small rebellion against the chaos. Ava stayed at the table sorting documents into tighter stacks. When I set a plate in front of Mia, she ate with the focus of someone who believed meals were sacred. Ava did not touch food. She watched my hands move, watched Mia watch the window. She was tracking everything even when she looked still. I slid a glass of water toward her. "You have to eat something." Ava took the glass but did not drink. "In a minute," she said. I wanted to argue. Instead, I sat down and opened the access log for my doorbell again. No new attempts, but the earlier ones sat there like fingerprints. Ava glanced at the screen. "They want visibility," she said. "They want leverage. They want to know where I am and who is with me." I swallowed. "Then my house is not safe." Ava's gaze held mine. "It is safer than being alone." A sharp sound came from outside, louder than the rain. I turned toward the front window. The dark sedan at the corner had started rolling forward slow. Not driving away, just shifting position like someone adjusting their view. Ava's hand found the edge of the table. Her knuckles went white. I stayed seated, forcing myself not to react too fast. Mia was watching me. Kids always watched even when you thought they were focused on nuggets and cartoons. The sedan paused. A silhouette moved inside. A phone screen glowed faintly, then dimmed. My doorbell app pinged once more. Motion detected. I stared at the notification, then at Ava, then at the front door, and the house suddenly felt smaller than it had this morning. Not because of the walls, but because of the attention pressing against them from the outside. The notification sat on my screen like a blinking eye. Motion detected. I did not move right away. I kept my shoulders loose, my face neutral, as if I was reading a weather alert and nothing more. Mia watched me with the quiet attention kids have when they sense the air has changed. Ava's gaze stayed on the front door. Her hand was still on the table, fingers splayed ready. I opened the doorbell app as slowly as I could and tapped the live view. The porch camera showed a wash of rain and gray light. Water dripped from the gutter in steady ropes. The doormat was empty. Then a figure stepped into frame close enough that the lens fogged for a half-second. Not a neighbor, not a delivery person. A man in a dark hooded jacket face turned slightly away, one hand lifted toward the camera like he was checking the angle. He did not ring. He stood there still for 3 seconds that felt longer than a full minute. Then he stepped out of view. My pulse hammered behind my ribs. I kept my voice low. Someone was on the porch. Mia's head tilted. Who? I forced a shrug. Probably someone checking for fallen branches. After a storm, people get curious. Mia accepted that the way kids accept adult explanations, when the tone sounds calm. She went back to her plate, dipping a nugget in ketchup with complete faith in the routine of lunch. Ava leaned closer to the phone. Her face also stayed composed, but her eyes sharpened as if she was memorizing every pixel. Did you get a clear shot of his face? She asked. He kept it turned away. Ava exhaled through her nose, controlled. That is not curiosity. I rewound the clip and watched it again. The man's hand rose toward the camera not to cover it, but to test where it could see, like he was measuring. I set the phone down and stood, then paused. I was one step from looking through the peephole, one step from pulling the curtain back, one step from doing something that would make the threat real for Mia. So I did the opposite. I walked to the sink and ran water. I rinsed a plate that did not need rinsing. I made my hands do normal things. Ava watched me for a moment, then looked toward the front window without moving closer. She knew how to check a room without telegraphing it. The sedan at the corner was still there. I could not see a face through the windshield. Only the suggestion of someone sitting inside. Ava's voice dropped. We should not stay exposed at that window. I know, I said. Mia swallowed a bite and looked at Ava. Are you scared? Ava's expression softened instantly like a switch flipped. She crouched beside Mia's chair, lowering herself to Mia's level. No, sweetheart, I'm just tired. Sometimes grown-ups get a serious face when we think about work. Mia studied her, then nodded. My teacher gets a serious face when kids eat glue. Ava's mouth twitched. That sounds reasonable. Mia leaned closer, whispering loudly. One time, Jonah ate a crayon. Ava's eyes widened with theatrical concern. Did he survive? Mia giggled. Yes. He turned purple. I felt my shoulders loosen a fraction. Mia's laughter was small, but it filled the kitchen like warm air. Ava stood and brushed her hands on the sides of my sweatpants, grounding herself again. If they are willing to come to your door, she said quietly, they are willing to do more. My phone buzzed with a community update. Someone posted a photo of the main road. The water had dropped enough to see the yellow line. People in rain boots were pushing stranded cars to higher ground. Ava read over my shoulder. The roads will clear. I stared at the sedan at the corner and felt a decision tighten in my chest. Then we need to finish before we lose the quiet. Ava nodded once. Yes. Mia hopped down from her chair and carried her plate to the sink with 2 hands like it was a ceremonial offering. She had been trained well, mostly because she liked earning praise. Can I watch a show? She asked. Sure, I said. Keep the volume low. She ran to the couch and curled under her blanket, remote in hand. Cartoons filled the room with bright voices that pretended storms did not exist. Ava and I went back to the table. She pulled the vendor invoice toward her and wrote the suite address on a sticky note, then wrote the phone number beneath it. Her handwriting was crisp, precise. At work, it was the handwriting that signed decisions people complained about. Here, it looked like a lifeline. I opened my laptop and logged into the internal calendar system, then into the board packet portal I had access to as a senior product lead. Not full access, but enough to see meeting titles and attachments. Ava slid a document toward me. Look at the date of that board minutes entry again, she said. I did, the day of her appointment. Ava's eyes narrowed. Now look at what else happened that week. I searched my email for that week and saw the same pattern. A sudden change in review cadence. A new leadership alignment meeting added last minute. a request for a private investor briefing that Ava had not initiated. My throat tightened. They were building a narrative. Ava nodded. They were collecting language. They were planting phrases that sound neutral but have teeth. I clicked into the investor briefing request. The sender was Gordon's assistant, but the wording was not hers. It had Gordon's voice polished and careful. Ava leaned in close enough that her hair brushed my shoulder. I felt it, and it made my focus wobble for a fraction of a second. I forced it back. She pointed to a line, that phrase, leadership continuity. That is the same phrase in the restructure draft. I highlighted it. Then I searched the phrase across emails. It appeared in 3 separate threads over 2 months each time in a slightly different context. The repetition was too consistent to be accident. Ava's voice stayed calm, but I could hear strain under it. He thinks if he says it often enough, it becomes truth. I scrolled further and found a note attached to a board packet. A short paragraph, no signature, posted as a comment in the portal. It talked about public-facing stability and market comfort. It talked about availability. It talked about optics. Ava stared at the screen, her jaw tight. He is trying to make my body a business risk. I looked at her, really looked. The woman who commanded a room. The woman who had built Harbor Line from a rented workspace near Rosslyn. The woman who never let anyone see her hands shake. "How are you holding up?" I asked. Ava blinked as if the question surprised her. "I do not know," she admitted, voice lower. "One minute I feel like I can fight them. The next minute I feel like I am standing on a stage while everyone decides what I am allowed to be." I swallowed. "You came here in the storm." Ava's gaze flicked toward Mia on the couch. I did not want to be alone. The confession hung between us, quiet and heavy. Mia laughed at something on the screen. The sound cut through the tension like a small blade of light. Ava watched her for a moment. Her expression softened in a way that felt almost private. "She is lucky," she said. "I'm the lucky one," I replied without thinking. Ava looked at me, and for a second the kitchen felt smaller for a different reason. Then she straightened, pulling her focus back like a curtain. "We keep going." I nodded and opened another folder. This one was labeled Project Lighthouse. The name made my stomach tighten. It was our most protected work, a guidance system designed for emergency response drones, the kind that could map flood zones and find stranded people in minutes. We had pitched it to state agencies, then to federal contractors. The tech was valuable because it worked in conditions where other systems failed. I glanced at Ava. "Why is this in your personal portfolio?" Ava's eyes did not flinch. "Because I do not trust their vault anymore." I stared at the header pages, then at her name on the patent filings beneath. "You registered the core algorithm personally." Ava nodded once. "I built it. Before the first round of funding, before the board seats, before Gordon ever pretended to care." My mouth went dry. "That means if they push you out, they lose the heart of Lighthouse. That is why they need me gone quietly," Ava said. "They need me removed without a fight, without me taking people with me, without me calling attention to how valuable the core is. And without you locking them out," I added. Ava's gaze held mine. Yes, I felt the pieces sliding into place, cold and sharp. So the vendor invoice could be payment for someone helping move assets. Ava leaned back, eyes narrowed. Or payment for someone on the outside. The word outside made me think of the sedan, the porch visitor, the login attempts. I rubbed my palms against my jeans, trying to push the energy somewhere. "We need something more than patterns." Ava nodded. "We need one undeniable connection." A small voice drifted from the couch, "Daddy." I turned. Mia was sitting up, remote in her hand. "Can I show Ava a picture?" Ava's face softened. "Of course." Mia climbed off the couch and ran down the hallway to my small home office. She came back holding my tablet, the one I used for video calls when my laptop camera acted up. She plopped it onto the table and swiped with confidence. "Look." A photo filled the screen. The holiday party from last year. Harbor Line's logo on a backdrop, strings of warm lights, everyone dressed up and pretending they were relaxed. Mia pointed at Ava's face in the photo. You look like a movie star." Ava blinked surprised into a real smile. That was a very long night. Mia swiped again. Another photo, another. She was scrolling through the album the company had sent out after the event, the one employees were encouraged to share. Mia stopped on a shot that was not centered on anyone important. It was a candid photo near the bar, blurred at the edges, taken mid-conversation. "This man looks mean," Mia said, tapping the screen with a crayon-stained finger. In the background, half hidden behind a cluster of balloons, Gordon Vale stood close to someone with his back turned to the camera. Gordon's posture was different than in board meetings. Less polished, more intent. His hand was lifted, as if emphasizing a point, his face angled down toward the other man. I leaned closer and pinched the screen to zoom. The man's face was turned just enough to catch the jawline, the haircut, the shape of the ear. My breath caught. Ava watched my expression. "Ethan." I zoomed again, enhancing the brightness. The image pixelated, but the profile sharpened enough to confirm what my gut already knew. "That's Miles Kerr," I said. Ava frowned slightly. "Who is that?" I felt my pulse kick harder. "He is not on our board." I swiped back to the photo and zoomed in again, forcing my brain to accept it. Miles Kerr had been photographed at an event of a competitor 2 months earlier, standing near Redwood Dynamics' CEO. I remembered because our internal newsletter had compared Redwood's product launches to ours, a polite way of saying they were gunning for us. "Miles Kerr sits on Redwood's advisory council," I said, voice tight. "I've seen him on panels. He is connected to their strategy team." Ava's face went very still. The softness she had shown Mia drained away, replaced by something colder and sharper. She stared at the photo, as if she could pull more secrets out of it by force. "If Gordon is meeting with him," Ava said slowly, "then this is not just about my pregnancy." The words landed with weight. Mia blinked between us. "Is he a bad guy?" I forced myself to smile. "We are just figuring out who he is." Ava leaned toward Mia, gentle again. "You did a good job noticing him," she said. "You have very smart eyes." Mia beamed. "I do." I took the tablet and sent the image to my email, then saved it in a folder on my laptop. My fingers moved fast, almost shaking. Ava pulled the Project Lighthouse papers closer and stared at the patent summary again. Her voice was low. "If they are talking to Redwood, then they are using the restructure as cover." For what I asked, even though I already felt the answer forming. Ava's gaze lifted to mine. "For a transfer, a sale, a carve-out that makes them money and makes the company weaker." My mouth went dry. "They need you out, so you cannot block it." Ava nodded once, and her hand pressed to her stomach with a steadiness that looked like resolve. Outside, the rain eased into a steady drizzle. A shaft of pale light broke through the clouds and hit the flooded street, making the water look almost calm. I checked the community chat again. Someone posted roads are passable near the main intersection. Watch for debris. The sedan at the corner rolled forward and disappeared down the street, unhurried. Ava watched it go without turning her head. I looked down at the holiday party photo on my screen. Gordon's intent face, Miles Kerr's profile in the background like a shadow that should not be there. My kitchen table was covered in paper and crumbs and crayons, and it felt like the center of a storm that had nothing to do with weather. The holiday party photo stayed on my screen long after Mia wandered back to the couch and Ava began stacking papers again. Gordon's face in that picture did not look like the man who liked to talk about culture and stewardship. It looked like someone bargaining in a hallway trying to keep his hands clean. Ava slid the Project Lighthouse pages into a folder and tucked it under the portfolio flap. "We need to treat that image like a match," she said quietly. "In the right place, it lights everything." Outside, the drizzle had softened to a wet hush. The street still shimmered, but the water no longer pulled at things with the same hunger. The neighborhood sounded like it was waking back up. A distant engine, a garage door, someone dragging a trash bin through puddles. My phone buzzed with another update from the community chat. "Main road opening. Use caution." Ava read over my shoulder and nodded once. "If people can move again, the board can move again." I closed the tablet and set it face down. Then we do not waste the rest of the day. Mia's cartoon chirped from the living room. She was curled into a ball under her blanket braid, slightly crooked now, thumb near her mouth when she forgot to act grown. Ava's gaze drifted to her, lingering. The hardness in her face softened for a second, then returned like a door closing. I need to call someone, she said. Someone who understands how they will try to frame this. Legal, I asked. Ava nodded. Nina Park. I knew the name. Our general counsel, the kind of lawyer who spoke in calm sentences and never raised her voice. She had been at Harborline for years, long enough to see boards change and executives come and go. You trust her, I asked. Ava hesitated. I trust her more than most, but she is inside the building. That means she is under their pressure too. Ava stepped into the hallway with her phone. I could hear her voice through the thin wall, low and controlled. Nina, it's Ava. A pause, a second pause. I need 5 minutes. No speakerphone, no assistance. I glanced at the front window again. The dark sedan was gone. The porch was empty. The quiet made me uneasy in a different way, like a room after shouting ends. I went to the kitchen and started cleaning, not because it mattered, but because my hands needed to do something that felt normal. I gathered Mia's plate-wiped ketchup smears, tossed wet paper towels. The house smelled like damp wood and dish soap. Mia called from the couch. Daddy, can I have a cookie? We do not have cookies, I called back. Yes, we do, she said with complete confidence. I opened the pantry. There was a box of animal crackers on the top shelf, hidden behind oatmeal. Mia's confidence was justified. You are right, I admitted. Ava came back into the kitchen, eyes sharper than before. She hung up and set her phone on the table like it weighed too much. What did she say, I asked. Ava pulled a chair out, then sat without fully relaxing into it. She said the board will hide behind process. No matter what the motive is, they will try to make it look procedural. That is what they are already doing, I said. Ava nodded. Nina also said Gordon has been asking for policy interpretations all week. Employment conduct, confidentiality, conflicts. My stomach tightened. He is building a way to fire me. Ava's gaze stayed on me, yes. Mia patted in and held up the animal crackers. I found them. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting. I thought I found them. Mia grinned and pushed one into her mouth, cheeks puffing. We both found them. Ava watched her, and the corner of her mouth lifted, almost reluctant. Mia looked up at Ava with sudden seriousness. Are you going to leave? Mia asked. Ava blinked. Leave where? Mia pointed vaguely at the front door, at the whole world outside. From our house. I felt my chest tighten at the word our. Ava's eyes flicked to me, then back to Mia. I am here right now, Ava said, choosing each word carefully. And I like being here with you. Mia's face softened into something satisfied, then she went back to the couch with her crackers. Ava exhaled slowly after she left. She makes it hard to lie. She makes it hard to do anything halfway, I said. Ava's gaze returned to the table. Nina told me something else. She said if Gordon is pushing this fast, it means he thinks he can win before anyone has time to ask questions. So we make questions unavoidable, I said. Ava nodded. We put them on notice. We show them patterns they cannot explain away. I slid my laptop closer. We need a package, not just a pile of paper. Ava opened her portfolio again and began arranging documents into a new order. Not chronological this time, tactical. Start with what is simplest, she said. The timeline around my medical appointment. The language shift. The restructure draft. It paints motive. I typed pulling dates into a clean spreadsheet. Meeting invites. Board minutes. Investor talking points. Each entry got a timestamp, a screenshot, and where it came from. My fingers moved fast, but my mind kept snagging on Mia, on the threat of termination, on the idea that a man like Gordon could take my daughter's stability and call it governance. Ava slid the vendor invoice toward me. Next, we show money, she said. People understand money. I pulled up the virtual office company page and saved it as a PDF. I added the vendor phone number, the suite address, the lack of onboarding records. I created a second spreadsheet tab labeled Payments and began listing the advisory charges. Ava watched my screen. Nina warned me they will claim you stole documents. I did not steal anything, I said. Ava's eyes stayed steady. They will say it anyway. I felt heat rise in my face. Then we document how I accessed it. Through my authorized accounts. Through portals I already use. Ava nodded once. Exactly. She slid a legal pad toward me. On it, she had written in neat lines, authorized access, whistleblower protection, retaliation, fiduciary duty. You wrote that fast, I said. Ava's lips pressed into a thin line. I had practiced last night. The words landed softly, and for a moment I saw her on my porch again, rain pouring off her hair, voice breaking when she said she was pregnant. My phone buzzed. An email notification. From Board Executive Office, subject emergency session confirmation. I opened it and felt my stomach drop a notch lower. 8:00 a.m. Harbor Line Headquarters. Executive Conference Room. Ava read it over my shoulder. She did not flinch, but her fingers curled against the edge of the table. 8, she said. That is early, I muttered. That is intentional, Ava replied. They want people tired. Mia shouted from the living room. Daddy the bunny is talking. Good for the bunny, I called back. Ava's eyes softened for half a second. We should feed her dinner soon. Keep things normal as long as we can. I nodded. Chicken nuggets again. Ava glanced at the freezer, then at me. I am not here to judge your menu. You should, I said. It is embarrassing. Ava gave a small laugh, real this time. It is familiar. That word familiar pulled at something in my chest. My house had never felt like a place someone like Ava would call familiar. I put nuggets in the oven, then cut apple slices. Ava finally drank the water I had given her earlier. She ate a few bites at dinner, slow at first, like she had forgotten how. Mia dictated the entire time, explaining the plot of her cartoon as if it were breaking news. After dinner, Mia asked Ava to read a bedtime story. Ava hesitated in the hallway, looking at me like she was unsure of the boundary. It is fine, I said quietly. She does not get many readers besides me. Ava's throat moved as she swallowed. Okay. Mia chose a picture book with a worn cover. Ava sat on the edge of Mia's bed, my college shirt hanging loose on her frame hair, still slightly damp at the ends. She held the book like it mattered, turning pages carefully, doing voices without trying too hard. Mia yawned mid-sentence, eyes drooping. Ava kept reading until Mia's breath slowed and her mouth fell open slightly, one hand curled around the blanket. When Ava stepped into the hallway again, she closed Mia's door with a softness that made my throat tighten. She is easy to love. Ava said, voice low. I nodded. She makes it easier to keep going. Ava did not answer. She walked back to the kitchen and sat down like she was forcing herself into motion again. The work waited silent and heavy. We built the case in layers. First, the discrimination thread presented as timing and language. Then, the retaliation thread shown through Gordon's emails to me and the anonymous threats. Ava insisted we save every message as a screenshot, then print them as well. Next, the money thread, the shell vendor, and the missing paperwork. Ava made notes in the margins with a pen, circling numbers, writing questions that would corner someone into either admitting ignorance or admitting intent. Then the connection thread, the holiday party photo. I pulled it up again, zoomed in, and enhanced it slightly without distorting anything. Ava watched Miles Kerr's blurred profile with a stillness that felt like anger held behind glass. We cannot accuse without support, Ava said. But we can ask why he was there. We can ask why Gordon was speaking to him. We can ask why money is moving to ghosts. I nodded. Questions that demand answers. Ava leaned back and rubbed her forehead. The strain showed in the way she held her shoulders. You should rest, I said. Ava looked at the papers, then at me. I will rest when it is done. Stubborn, I murmured. Ava met my eyes. So are you. The power steadied around 10. The overhead light came on without flickering, bright and almost rude after hours of candle glow. The house looked suddenly ordinary again. The sink, the fridge, the magnet drawings on the side. The normalness felt like camouflage. Ava plugged her phone in and opened a secure folder. Nina sent me templates, she said. Language for a formal notice. Language for requesting an independent investigation. Language for preserving evidence. You told her about Redwood, I asked. Ava nodded, carefully. She said if we mention a competitor, Gordon will call it paranoia. So we show the photo and ask for an explanation. We show the payments and ask for contracts. We show the restructure draft and ask why it was written when it was. I watched her type, hands steady now. Ava was back in her element, but there was something different about it. Less performance, more purpose. I assembled everything onto a flash drive I kept for work demos. I created folders. Timeline, payments, communications, images, legal. I added a simple index document, clean and direct with page numbers and dates. Ava watched me label the drive. Her voice softened. You are good at this. It is just organization, I said. It is protection, Ava corrected. Near midnight, the house was quiet, except for the refrigerator hum and the occasional creak as the wood cooled. Mia slept down the hall, her nightlight making a faint glow under her door. Ava gathered the printed pages into a binder I had from an old product launch. She snapped it shut and held it for a second as if feeling the weight. We should keep a copy here, she said. I already did, I replied, pointing to the second flash drive I had prepared. 2 copies. Separate places. Ava's eyes held mine with something like relief. I stood and stretched my back, aching. You can take the bed again. Ava shook her head. I can take the couch. You cannot, I said firmer than I intended. You are exhausted, and you are pregnant, and the couch is terrible. Ava's mouth twitched. You are dramatic. I am correct, I replied. Ava hesitated, then nodded. She walked to my bedroom door, then paused and looked back. The kitchen light made her face look softer than the boardroom ever did. Ethan, she said quietly. I did not mean to bring this into your home. I looked toward the hallway where Mia slept. It is already here, I said. We just finally named it. Ava exhaled slowly, then stepped into the bedroom. The door closed with a gentle click. I lay on the couch with my phone on the coffee table, the flash drive in my pocket like a stone. Outside, the world had stopped raging and settled into dripping silence. The split oak in the yard was a dark shape against the streetlight. My phone buzzed once more. Not a threat this time. A calendar reminder automatically synced from the board email. Emergency executive session, 8:00 a.m. I stared at the glowing screen until my eyes burned, then turned it face down and listened to the quiet, holding my breath for the next sound that might mean someone was close enough to touch the door. I must have dozed off at some point because the next thing I knew, the refrigerator clicked on, and the sound startled me awake. The house was still. Not the kind of still that feels peaceful, but the kind that feels like it is listening. I sat up on the couch and blinked at the dark. The streetlight outside cut a thin rectangle across the living room floor. Mia's blanket rose and fell in a slow rhythm. She had migrated from the couch to the rug sometime during the night, curled around her stuffed rabbit like it could stand guard. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. I turned my head and saw Ava at the end of the hall, barefoot, my old shirt hanging loose on her shoulders. Her hair was pulled back messy and quick, like she had done it without looking in a mirror. She stood there for a moment as if she was deciding whether to speak. You okay? I asked, softly. She shook her head once, almost imperceptibly. Couldn't sleep. I lifted the edge of the blanket off my legs and stood careful not to make the couch springs complain. Do you want water? Ava nodded and followed me into the kitchen. The overhead light felt too bright, so I left it off and turned on the small lamp near the sink. It cast a warm circle over the counter and left the corners of the room in shadow. Ava leaned against the table, eyes tired but alert. I poured water into a glass, then hesitated and pulled out a mug instead. tea. She exhaled like the offer hit a place she had not admitted was aching. If you have it. I found a box of chamomile buried behind coffee filters. The kettle hissed. The quiet between us filled with small domestic sounds, the kind my life had but hers probably never made room for. Ava watched my hands. You did not have to do all this. You mean make tea? I asked. She gave a faint smile that did not last. Any of it. I set the mug in front of her. I did not drag you to my porch. Ava wrapped her hands around the mug as if she needed the heat to stay in the room. No. I walked up to your door. In the rain. And I brought a fire with me. I leaned on the counter. Gordon already lit the match. You just stopped pretending you could hold it alone. Ava's eyes lifted to mine. The lamplight made them look softer than they did at work, but there was still steel underneath. I am used to holding it alone, she said. I can tell, I replied. Ava's mouth tightened. You think I enjoy it? I shook my head. I think you learned it. She stared down into the tea, watching the surface ripple. When I was 28, I pitched my first investor group. All men. I had a prototype in my backpack and a debt I did not tell anyone about. They asked who my husband was. She looked up. Not if I had one, who? My jaw tightened. They asked if I planned on having children, she continued. They said it like they were asking about office space. I told them no. I said it with a smile. I got the funding. Then I went to my car and cried because I hated myself for saying it. The kitchen felt smaller, not because of walls, but because of the truth taking up space. I kept my voice low. So you built a company by pretending you were not human. Ava's lips pressed together. I built a company by giving them what they were willing to buy. A faint sound came from the living room. Mia shifted and mumbled something in her sleep. Ava's gaze flicked toward the doorway, then returned. I didn't know, I said. Ava's eyes sharpened a little. You did not ask. That is fair, I admitted. We are not exactly friends at work. Ava huffed a quiet laugh. No, we are not. The laugh faded. The air between us changed slow and almost reluctant. I set my palms on the counter and watched her. Why did you come here, Ava? Her eyes stayed on the mug. The power was out at my building. The elevators were dead. Security was not answering. I could have booked a hotel, but hotels have cameras and people who talk. She swallowed. I could have called a driver, but I did not want a stranger knowing where I was going. That does not explain me, I said. Ava's fingers tightened around the mug. She looked up. You want the honest answer? Yes. Ava held my gaze. Her voice came out quieter than before. Because you see me. I did not speak. She continued, careful now, like she was walking across glass. At work, most people see the role. They see the title. They see what they can get from me or what they have to protect themselves from. You do not flatter. You do not perform. When you disagree with me, you say it. When you think I am pushing too hard, you hold your ground. You look at me like I am a person. My throat tightened. Ava's eyes glistened, but the tears did not fall. And I'm tired of being a symbol. The words settled between us. I felt them in my chest like a weight. I am not a hero, I said quietly. Ava nodded. Neither am I. I took a step closer without thinking. Then I stopped as if my body remembered the rules before my mind did. Ava's gaze dropped to my hands, then back to my face. Ethan, she said softly, if you want me to leave, I will. My mouth went dry. Do you want to leave? Ava did not answer right away. She stared at me for a long moment, and in her face I saw two versions of her fighting. The Ava who survived by control. The Ava who showed up at my door, soaked and shaking because control had finally failed. I do not know what I want, she whispered. I reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair away from her cheek almost without permission. My fingertips barely touched her skin. She did not pull away. The touch was small. The impact was not. Ava's breath caught. Her eyes flicked to my mouth. Then she closed the distance. Her lips met mine like something she had refused to need for too long. For a second, I stood frozen, shock racing through me. Then my hands lifted, one settling against her waist, the other cradling the back of her head. She tasted like tea and rain, and a kind of ache I understood too well. The kiss was not gentle. It was not careful. It was relief and fear and loneliness folding into one. It felt like an argument that had been going on in silence for months finally decided to speak. Ava pulled back, first breath uneven. She rested her forehead against my chest for a beat, then looked up at me. "This complicates everything," she said, voice rough. I swallowed. Maybe we were already complicated. Ava's mouth twitched, but her eyes stayed serious. "They will use this. If they find out," I said. Ava stepped back as if she needed space to think. Her hands pressed to the edge of the table, knuckles pale. "They are already watching your porch. They tried to access your doorbell. They sent anonymous threats. If they want leverage, they will look for leverage." My pulse pounded again, the adrenaline returning like a wave. I forced myself to breathe. "So we keep it private." Ava's gaze held mine. "And we keep it clean. No messages, no photos, no mistakes." The word mistakes landed like a warning. From the living room, Mia coughed softly and rolled over. Ava glanced toward her, then back at me. Ava's hand moved to her stomach and she pressed lightly as if checking that her body was still real. "I should not have done that," she whispered. I felt a flare of something hot and protective. "Do not say that." Ava's eyes softened, then hardened again. "I have to survive this meeting, and I have to keep my daughter safe," I replied. The words hung between us not as a barrier but as a shared truth. Ava took a steadying breath. "We need to check something." "What?" "My car," she said. "If they are tracking you, they might be tracking me too." The thought tightened my stomach. "You think they put something on it?" Ava nodded. "It happens. It is easy. And it explains how Gordon knew where you were." I grabbed my flashlight and my keys. Ava hesitated at the hallway entrance, glancing toward Mia. I moved quietly and pulled the living room blanket higher over my daughter's shoulders. She did not wake. Then Ava and I slipped out the back door into the damp night. The air smelled like wet grass and broken wood. The split oak was a dark shape in the front yard, its jagged center exposed like a wound. The street was quieter now, with only a few cars passing slowly through standing water. Ava's car was parked in my driveway, a sleek, dark sedan that looked too polished for my neighborhood. Water beaded on the hood, catching the flashlight beam like tiny glass marbles. Ava crouched and aimed the light under the rear bumper. I did the same under the front. "Look for anything that does not belong," she said. My hands were cold. The ground was slick. I moved the beam along the undercarriage, scanning for wires, boxes, anything taped or magnetized. Ava's breathing was controlled, but I could see tension in her shoulders. Then she froze. "Here," she said. I slid closer, flashlight following her finger. A small, black rectangle sat tucked near the frame, held in place with a magnet. It was clean, new, not part of the car. My pulse spiked. "That is it." Ava's face went pale, then steady. "Yes." I reached for it, hesitated, then pulled my hand back. "Should we touch it?" Ava's voice stayed calm. "We should, but we document it first." I pulled out my phone and took photos from different angles. Ava held the flashlight steady. The beam shook just a little. "Okay," I said. I carefully slid the device free. It was lighter than it looked. I turned it over. No markings. Just a serial number stamped into the plastic. Ava stared at it like it was a living thing. They were confident enough to do this. I felt anger rise sharp and immediate. In my driveway, Ava's gaze lifted to me. "In your life." We stood there in wet silence, the device cold in my palm. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked, then stopped. Ava's voice dropped. "We give this to Nina, and we keep a copy of the photos," I said. Ava nodded. "Yes." We went back inside, locking the door behind us. The warmth of the house hit my skin like a wave. The contrast made the fear feel even sharper. In the kitchen, I set the tracker on the table beside the flash drives and the binder. It looked small and harmless next to stacks of paper, which somehow made it worse. Ava sat down and closed her eyes for a second, breathing through her nose. When she opened them, she looked more like herself again, except now there was a new line of anger at the corner of her mouth. "They did not just want me out," she said. "They wanted control." I nodded. "And they are willing to cross lines to get it." Ava's gaze flicked to the clock. It was after 2. "We should sleep," she said. I almost laughed. In theory. Ava stood, then stopped. She looked at me. Really looked like she was seeing me in full for the first time. Not as an employee. Not as a potential ally. As a man with a child down the hall, a job under threat, and now a tracking device on his kitchen table. "I am sorry," she said. I shook my head. "Do not apologize for someone else's cruelty." Ava's eyes glistened again. This time she did not look away. "If you walk into that meeting with me, they will come after you harder." "I know," I said. "And Mia will feel it." Ava added, voice tight. I thought of my daughter asleep on the rug, the braid slipping loose, her trust intact. My chest ached. "I have spent 3 years trying to make her world stable," I said quietly. "I have been careful. I have been polite. I have swallowed things I hated because I needed the paycheck." I looked at the tracker, and they still came to my porch. Ava did not interrupt. I continued, voice steady now. "If I back away, they do it again. To you, to me, to anyone who is inconvenient." Ava's throat moved as she swallowed. "Ethan." I stepped closer. Not for another kiss. Just close enough to be honest. "Mia needs stability," I said. "She also needs to know I did not teach her to be afraid of bullies in cartoons and then bow to them in real life." Ava's eyes softened, and something in her expression broke open, small and raw. "Then we go together," she whispered. I nodded once, together. Ava's hand lifted and hovered near mine. Then her fingers threaded through my fingers, careful, quiet, like she was learning how to ask for something without paying for it. We stood like that for a moment, listening to the house. Mia's breathing, the refrigerator hum, the distant drip of rain from the gutters. Ava let go first, then straightened. The CEO mask returned, but it sat differently now. Less armor for show, more armor for survival. "I will try to sleep," she said. "So will I replied. Ava paused at the hallway, then turned back. Her eyes held mine for a beat. She did not smile. She did not speak. She simply looked like a woman who had decided not to disappear. I lay back on the couch and stared at the ceiling again. The flash drive pressed into my pocket like a reminder. The tracker sat on the table under the lamp, a small, black proof that fear had an address. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again, faint this time, as if the sky was clearing its throat. I slept in fragments, the kind that feel like falling down short stairs. Each time I drifted off, I saw the black tracker on the table. Each time I woke, the house was still, as if it was holding its breath with me. At 5:30, my alarm buzzed. I sat up, rubbed my face, and listened. No footsteps outside. No car doors. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint drip from the gutters. Ava was already in the kitchen. She stood at the counter in the soft morning light, hair pulled back clean. Posture straight. My oversized shirt replaced by a fitted black turtleneck she must have pulled from her portfolio. Her blazer was draped over a chair. She held a mug in both hands and stared into it like it might offer answers. "You didn't sleep," I said. "I slept enough," she replied, and the tone was pure. Ava controlled and clipped. Then her eyes flicked to my face and softened slightly. "How's Mia?" I glanced down the hall, still out. Ava nodded, then gestured toward the table. The binder sat there fat with paper. 2 flash drives lay beside it. The tracker was sealed in a clear plastic bag, my best attempt at keeping it untouched. I had printed the photos of it and the porch clip stills on my cheap home printer ink, a little streaked but legible. Ava set her mug down. "We take everything," she said, "but we present only what we need." I reached for the binder. Timeline first. Ava nodded. timeline first. I checked my phone. No new threats overnight, just the calendar reminder. 8 a.m. Harbor Line headquarters. You ready? I asked. Ava's hand went to her stomach, light and protective. No, she said. Yes. That was the closest thing to honesty and bravery sharing the same sentence. At 6:15, Mia padded into the kitchen with her stuffed rabbit pressed to her cheek. Her braid had loosened into a soft wave and her eyes were puffy with sleep. Is it morning? She asked. It is, I said, crouching to her level. We have to go to work for a little bit. Mia's gaze slid to Ava. Ava's going too. Yes, Ava said gently, kneeling. I have a meeting. Mia blinked, then looked at me. Am I going to school? Not today, I said. You're going to Mrs. Delgado's for a few hours. Mia's face brightened. Fort Lady. Ava's lips curved. Fort Lady sounds powerful. Mia nodded seriously. She has soup. Ava glanced at me. Soup is a form of security. I almost smiled. In this neighborhood, yes. I packed Mia's little backpack with a change of clothes, snacks, and her favorite book. Ava watched quiet like she was absorbing the rhythm of it. When I zipped the backpack, Mia grabbed Ava's hand without asking. Ava froze for half a second, then let Mia's fingers thread through hers. We're going, Mia announced. Mrs. Delgado opened her door before I even knocked. She wore sweatpants, a cardigan, and the alert expression of someone who had lived long enough to smell trouble. There's my girl, she said, scooping Mia into a hug. Come in, come in. I've got soup and blankets and enough pillows to build a whole city. Mia squealed and dashed inside. Mrs. Delgado's eyes moved to Ava, taking her in with a calm that felt like a scan. And you must be the guest. Ava stepped forward and offered her hand. Ava Sinclair. Mrs. Delgado shook it with a firm grip. Elena Delgado. You look like you've had a rough couple of days. Ava held her gaze. That's accurate. Mrs. Delgado's eyes flicked to me. Ethan, honey, you look like you're trying not to blink. I'm fine, I said automatically. Mrs. Delgado gave me a look that told me she did not buy lies, not even polite ones. I'll keep Mia safe, she said, voice steady. You do what you have to do. Mia ran back and rabbit under one arm. She hugged Ava around the waist hard and fast. Ava's breath caught. She bent down and returned the hug, careful. Be good, Ava whispered. Mia pulled back and squinted at her. Are you my daddy's girlfriend? My chest tightened. Ava's cheeks colored, but she did not look away. She crouched and met Mia's eyes. I'm your daddy's friend, she said softly, and I'm your friend too. Mia considered this, then nodded once like it was a contract. Okay, don't be mean to him. Ava's mouth twitched. I won't. Mia seemed satisfied and ran back to Mrs. Delgado, already asking where the fort would be built. I stood suddenly unsure what to do with my hands. Ava rose beside me, her expression composed, but her eyes stayed on Mia for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Mrs. Delgado stepped closer and lowered her voice. You two be careful, she said. People who send threats do not stop because you ask nicely. Ava's eyes sharpened. He received threats. Mrs. Delgado glanced at me. He didn't tell you. I exhaled. She knows now. Mrs. Delgado nodded once, then stepped back, her tone returning to warm. Okay, go. I'll feed her. I'll keep the door locked. We left. The drive into Harbor Line felt quieter than it should have. The roads were wet, but passable. Fallen branches lined the curbs like discarded bones. The city looked rinsed clean, but I knew better now. Clean did not mean safe. Ava sat in the passenger seat, binder on her lap, one hand resting over it, as if she could keep it steady through will alone. She stared out the windshield, jaw tight. You want music? I asked. No, she said. Silence is fine. We pulled into the garage beneath Harbor Line's glass tower. The building looked the same as always, sleek and confident, as if storms only happened to other places. My badge worked. That surprised me more than it should have. In the elevator, Ava adjusted her blazer and lifted her chin. The CEO mask settled into place, but I could still see the woman under it. The one who had stood on my porch and said I'm pregnant like it was both a confession and a threat. The elevator opened to the executive floor. The carpet smelled like cleaner. The air was too cold. 2 people stood near the conference room doors. One was Gordon Vale. The other was a security manager I recognized from Quarterly. All hands, a man who liked to talk about safety culture while watching everyone's hands. Gordon's smile appeared the moment he saw Ava. It was polite, practiced, and empty. "Ava," he said, "I'm glad you could make it." Ava did not slow down. "Good morning." Gordon's gaze slid to me. The smile did not change, but the temperature in his eyes did. "Ethan Brooks," he said. "You're early." "I was invited," I said, though we both knew I wasn't. Gordon took a small step toward me. "This is an executive session," he said. "You are not on the agenda." Ava stopped. "He's with me." Gordon's brows lifted just a fraction. "He is not authorized." "He is authorized," Ava replied, voice even. "He is a senior product lead with access to records relevant to this discussion." Gordon's gaze flicked to the binder, records. Ava held his eyes, yes. The security manager shifted his weight, watching Gordon for cues. Gordon's voice stayed smooth. "We can discuss your concerns with counsel. Ethan does not need to be present." Ava's expression did not change. "He does." Gordon's smile tightened. "Ava, do not make this harder." Ava stepped closer just enough that Gordon had to look up at her. "I'm not the one making it hard," she said quietly. "Open the doors." For a moment, Gordon held her gaze. Then his smile widened, as if he had decided to let her walk into her own trap. "Fine," he said. "Let's proceed." The boardroom was all glass and clean lines. A long table, leather chairs, a screen at the far end. 8 board members sat, spaced out coffee cups and tablets in front of them. The general counsel chair was empty. When Ava walked in, the room's energy shifted. People straightened, eyes sharpened. A few faces carried surprise, like they had expected her to arrive alone or not at all. Ava took her seat at the head of the table. I sat one chair to her right, slightly back close enough to hand her what she needed. My palms were damp. I wiped them against my slacks under the table. Gordon took a seat opposite her, casual, as if this were routine. He clasped his hands. "Thank you all for joining on short notice," he began. "Given recent developments, we need to address leadership stability and organizational direction." Ava's voice cut through calm. "Before you proceed, we need to address board conduct." The room stilled. Gordon's smile returned. "Ava, this is not the time for personal grievances." "This is the exact time," Ava said, and slid a flash drive onto the table. The small click of plastic against wood sounded loud in the silence. "We have evidence that the board has been preparing to remove me under the pretext of restructuring due to my pregnancy, and we have evidence of retaliatory behavior aimed at anyone who supports my right to remain in my role." A board member with silver hair leaned forward. "Pregnancy," she repeated as if the word itself had weight. Gordon's expression stayed smooth. "This is inappropriate." Ava looked at him without blinking. "It is accurate." Gordon turned to the others. "We are here to ensure the company is protected." Ava nodded once. "So am I." She looked at me. "Ethan." I stood, walked to the screen, and plugged in the flash drive. My hands were steady now because movement gave them something to do. The screen lit up with a simple title slide timeline of board actions and communications. Gordon's eyes narrowed. "This is not an approved presentation." "It is now," Ava said. I clicked through. The first section showed dates clean and undeniable. The day Ava left early for a medical appointment. The board minutes that same day mentioning leadership succession options. The investor talking points 2 days later using the phrase leadership continuity. The restructured draft created weeks before anyone supposedly knew anything. Ava spoke, while the slides moved, her voice steady, precise. They began restructuring discussions the day of my medical appointment. Not after I announced anything publicly. Not after a performance issue. On that day, a board member frowned. How would anyone know the nature of her appointment? Ava's gaze did not move. That is part of the problem. I clicked to the next section. Email excerpts. Gordon's own language repeated over months, building a narrative. Availability. Optics. Market comfort. Ava's voice stayed calm. This is how discrimination happens in rooms like this. You never say the word, you just let people feel it. Gordon scoffed softly. This is interpretation. Ava nodded. Then interpret this. I clicked to a screenshot of Gordon's email to me. Subject, your employment status. The line about termination for cause. My throat tightened as I saw it projected large on the screen. A board member looked at Gordon. You emailed an employee about misconduct for supporting the CEO. Gordon spread his hands. He inserted himself into executive matters. Ava leaned forward slightly. He assisted me in documenting board actions that directly impact company governance. Threatening termination is retaliation. Gordon's jaw tightened. This is not retaliation, this is policy. Ava lifted her chin. Then explained the anonymous threats. I clicked to screenshots of the unknown number messages. Last warning. Terminated for cause. The timestamps. A murmur passed through the room. Gordon's face stayed composed. Anyone can fabricate a text. Ava's voice did not rise. Then explained the tracker. I clicked to the photos taken under Ava's car. The small black device on the frame. Then a close-up of the serial number. Silence landed hard. A board member with a tight bun stared at the screen. What is that? Ava's gaze held the room. A GPS tracker attached to my vehicle while I was traveling during the storm. We removed it in Ethan's driveway last night. Gordon's voice sharpened. This is absurd. Ava's eyes flicked to him. Is it? Then you should welcome an investigation. The silver-haired board member leaned back, lips pressed together. Where is Nina Park? She asked. Gordon's smile returned strained. She is unavailable this morning. Ava's expression did not change. Convenient. I clicked to the next section, payments. The vendor name. The invoice with advisory services. The suite address. Then the screenshot of the virtual office company page showing mail, forwarding, and temporary suites. Ava spoke quietly. We have payments moving to a vendor that has no onboarding record in our system. No contract. No approval trail. A ghost address. A board member tapped his tablet, frowning. This should be an audit. Gordon shifted in his chair. The finance department handles vendor compliance. Ava's gaze stayed steady. Finance does not approve board spending. You do. I clicked to the holiday party photo, zoomed in. Gordon's face visible intent. The blurred profile of Miles Kerr beside him. Ava's voice stayed even. And then we have this. She looked directly at Gordon. Why were you meeting with Miles Kerr at our holiday party? Gordon's smile tightened. Who is Miles Kerr? I heard a small intake of breath from someone down the table, the sound of recognition. A board member with glasses frowned. That name is familiar. I spoke before I could stop myself. He's affiliated with Redwood Dynamics. The room's attention snapped to me. I felt my face heat, but I kept going. I've seen him at industry panels. Redwood's advisory council is public. Gordon's gaze sharpened like a blade. Mr. Brooks, you are out of line. Ava's voice cut in calm and cold. He is a witness. Gordon turned to the board. This is becoming a circus. Ava did not flinch, then stopped juggling knives. For a second, the air felt charged enough to spark. Gordon leaned forward, voice low. Ava, if you insist on dragging employees into this and circulating unapproved materials, the board has the authority to remove you. We also have the authority to terminate Mr. Brooks effective immediately for misconduct. My stomach dropped. Even expecting it did not make it easier. Ava's eyes stayed on Gordon. Do it, she said. The room stilled again. Gordon blinked. Excuse me. Ava's voice remained steady. Fire him, remove him, and I will resign. Today. A board member's eyes widened. Ava. Ava's gaze moved to the board, not pleading, not emotional, just clear. If you want stability, you do not create it by punishing employees who document governance issues. That is not stability, that is fear. Gordon's smile faltered. You would abandon the company. Ava's eyes narrowed. I built this company. I am not abandoning it. I am refusing to be erased. She placed her hand on the table, palm down, anchoring herself. And if I leave, you lose more than a CEO. You lose patents registered in my name. You lose client relationships I built personally. You lose the loyalty of the development team that has followed my vision from day one. I saw 2 board members exchange a look, quick and sharp. They understood leverage when they heard it. Ava's voice stayed calm. You will also inherit a legal battle you cannot keep quiet. Discrimination, retaliation, improper governance, unexplained payments, a tracker on my vehicle, and a photograph that raises questions you have not answered. Gordon's jaw worked as if he were chewing something bitter. Those patents belong to the company. Ava turned her head slightly. Some do, some do not. We can review the filings together if you like. Gordon's eyes flashed. Then he recovered, trying to regain the room. This is unacceptable, he said. We are trying to protect shareholder value. Ava looked at him like she could see the strings behind his words. Then start by protecting the company from the people willing to break laws to control it. Silence sat heavy. I could hear my own breathing. A board member cleared her throat. We need counsel present, she said. Another nodded. We need audit. The silver-haired member looked directly at Gordon. We also need Nina Park. Gordon's expression tightened into something brittle. We can recess and reconvene. Ava nodded once. Recess, and issue a litigation hold on all communications payments and security logs, effective immediately. Gordon stared at her. For a moment, he looked like a man who had expected an easy win and instead found a locked door. We will deliberate, he said finally, each word forced through his teeth. Ava stood. I stood with her binder under my arm, flash drive in my pocket. My legs felt unsteady, but my posture stayed upright because Ava's did. As we walked out, Gordon's voice followed, quieter, now meant for our backs. This ends badly for you. Ava did not turn around. It already ended badly, she replied and kept walking. In the hallway, the air felt colder. My heartbeat was still in my ears. Ava's breathing was controlled, but her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the binder against her hip. I reached toward her hand, then stopped. Cameras, eyes, rules. Ava glanced at me, reading the impulse anyway. Her expression shifted just for a second, something warm under the steel. Then it was gone, replaced by focus. We kept moving, step by step, through the glass hallways of the company she had built, carrying our evidence like it weighed less than the silence we had just broken. The door to the stairwell swung shut behind us, and the sound of it sealed the meeting away like a secret. For the first time since dawn, Ava's shoulders dropped. Not much, just enough to show the weight she had been carrying with her spine. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The concrete smelled faintly of dust and old rain. I let out a breath I did not remember holding. You didn't blink, I said. Ava gave a short laugh that sounded like it belonged to someone else. Neither did you. My hands were still shaking. I tucked them into my pockets and stared at the metal steps, forcing my body to slow down. He was ready to fire me. Ava's eyes stayed forward. He wanted you to flinch. I almost did, I admitted. Ava turned then, and the look she gave me was steady and close to gentle. You didn't. Footsteps echoed somewhere above us. A door opened and closed. We fell silent until the sound faded. Ava shifted the binder higher against her hip. We go to Nina, she said. In person, I asked. Ava nodded once. No more calls, no more messages. We moved through the executive corridor like everything was normal, like we were heading to another meeting with polite agendas. People glanced up from desks and looked away quickly. The building had its own kind of weather, and you could feel when it changed. Nina Park's office sat near the end of the hall, tucked behind frosted glass and a receptionist desk that was suddenly empty. Ava did not slow. She knocked once and opened the door. Nina stood behind her desk with her phone in hand, face pale as if she had been expecting a flood, and it arrived anyway. She looked at Ava, then at me, then at the binder. "You brought him," Nina said quietly. Ava stepped inside and closed the door. "He's part of this now." Nina's gaze held mine. I told Ava I could help, but I also told her there are limits. I nodded. "I'm not here to make your job harder." Nina's mouth tightened. That would be a first for someone in this building. Ava set the binder on Nina's desk. They recessed. "They tried to move without you." Nina's eyes flashed. "Of course they did." Ava leaned forward. "You said they would hide behind process. They just tried to weaponize it in real time." Nina exhaled slowly and stepped around her desk. "Show me what you have." We opened the binder together. Nina moved through the pages with the speed of someone who could read a contract in one pass and hear the lie between commas. When she reached the tracker photos, her jaw tightened. "That is criminal," she said. Ava's voice stayed calm. "It was removed from my car in Ethan's driveway." Nina looked at me. "You photographed it before touching it." "Yes," I said. "Multiple angles, time-stamped." Nina nodded once, satisfied. She flipped to the payment section and paused at the virtual office address. "This is sloppy," she murmured. Ava's eyes narrowed, sloppy or rushed. Nina looked up. "Both." "Gordon has been pushing for speed. He asked me to draft language for removal that would look voluntary. When I refused, he tried to route it through an outside firm." Ava's gaze sharpened. "Which firm?" Nina hesitated, then pulled a legal pad from her desk drawer and wrote a name down. She slid it toward Ava without speaking. Ava read it and went still. "They represent Redwood," she said, voice low. Nina's expression tightened. "That is what I suspected, but I had no proof until this morning." I felt the blood drain from my face. The holiday photo, the ghost vendor, the outside firm. The pieces were locking into place with a cold click. Nina turned the legal pad back to herself and wrote another line. "One more thing," she said. "Gordon has been meeting privately with a partner from a fund called Northline Capital." Ava's head tilted. "Northline holds shares." Nina nodded. "Not a lot publicly, but enough to lean. They want influence without visibility." Ava stared at the wall for a beat, then looked at Nina. "Is Northline connected to Redwood?" Nina did not answer immediately. She walked to her computer, typed, and turned the screen toward us. A filing, a set of disclosures, names listed in small print. Ava read it, then lifted her gaze. "A Northline partner sits on Redwood's board." Nina nodded once. "That is the bridge." My stomach turned. It was worse than I thought. Not a single bad actor. A network. Money and influence threaded together through polite titles. Ava pressed her fingers to her temple. "They were never trying to protect the company," she said softly. "They were trying to extract it." Nina's voice stayed practical. "Which means you do not treat this like a workplace dispute. You treat it like governance misconduct and potential theft of trade secrets." Ava looked at me. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. My throat felt tight. I heard it. Nina's gaze returned to me. "Ethan, you need to be careful. Gordon will try to turn you into the scandal so the substance disappears." The word scandal made my skin prickle. Ava's posture straightened. "He already tried." Nina moved back to her desk and opened a drawer. "I am issuing a litigation hold now," she said. "All board communications, all vendor payments, all security logs, all access records. If anyone deletes anything after this, it becomes a different kind of problem." Ava's voice was flat. "He will still try." Nina nodded. "Then we document every attempt." Nina's fingers flew over her keyboard. The printer whirred to life. While she worked, Ava stood beside the window looking out at the city. Her hand rested lightly against her stomach, less like fear now and more like promise. My phone buzzed. From Human Resources Subject Mandatory Compliance Meeting. My mouth went dry. I opened it. The language was polite, full of concern. A routine review, a brief meeting, a reminder of confidentiality obligations, attendance required. Ava saw my expression and stepped closer. "What is it?" I handed her the phone. Her eyes hardened. He moved fast. Nina turned from her computer. "He is trying to create a second track," she said. "One track is removing Ava. The other is discrediting you." I swallowed. "I have a kid. I can't afford to get blacklisted." Nina's gaze held mine. "Then you do not go alone. You do not speak without counsel. You do not sign anything. You bring me." Ava's voice was low and steady. "We go together." My chest tightened at the word together. It felt like a rope thrown across a gap. An hour later, the entire company received an email from the board. Subject: leadership review and stability measures. I read it in my inbox like it was a weather warning. It said the company was committed to continuity. It said they were evaluating leadership structure. It said they had full confidence in the board's process. It said nothing about Ava. It said nothing about pregnancy. It said nothing about the tracker or the ghost payments or Redwood. It also said employees should refrain from speculation and direct questions to internal communications. Ava stared at the email and let out a slow breath. "They are painting a wall," she said. Nina's tone was brisk. "Walls are for hiding, not for winning." By lunchtime, the wall already had cracks. A message popped up on my phone from a coworker I trusted, a developer named Sam. "You okay? People are talking." I typed back with stiff fingers. "About what?" Sam replied fast. "They say Ava is unstable. They say she is stepping down. They say you are involved somehow." My throat tightened. Involved somehow. The rumor was already reaching for the one thing that could make people stop asking about money and start staring at us. Ava watched my face as I read. "He is testing the story," she said. "Seeing what sticks." I thought of Mia at Mrs. Delgado's house building forts and eating soup, unaware that my job might be evaporating in real time. I pictured the school calendar on my fridge. Rent due in 2 weeks. A 5-year-old who still believed her dad could fix thunderstorms. Nina printed a set of documents and stapled them cleanly. "This is notice of retaliation risk," she said, handing them to Ava. "This is a request for independent investigation," she added, handing another packet to Ava. "And this is preservation demand," she said, turning to me. "Ethan, this one is for HR. You bring it to that compliance meeting and you say you will not speak without counsel present." I took it with the hands that felt too large for the paper. "Okay." Ava's voice softened slightly. "Thank you," she said to Nina. Nina looked at Ava like she was weighing the room and deciding where she stood in it. "I am not doing this for gratitude," she said. "I am doing it because Gordon crossed lines that cannot be uncrossed." Ava nodded once. Same. The HR meeting was held in a small conference room on the 3rd floor away from executive glass. The air smelled like dry carpet and lemon cleaner. An HR manager sat with a notepad. A security representative sat beside her, arms crossed. Gordon was not there, but he did not need to be. His fingerprints were on the setup. When I walked in, Ava and Nina came with me. The HR manager blinked, surprised. "Ms. Sinclair, this is an employee matter." Ava's voice stayed even. It became my matter when it became retaliation. Nina slid the documents across the table. "We are placing the company on notice," she said calmly. "Any adverse action against Mr. Brooks related to his support of protected reporting will be treated as retaliation. We will also require preservation of all related records." The HR manager's lips parted, then closed. Her eyes flicked to the security rep, then back. "We just wanted to clarify confidentiality," she said. Nina's gaze did not soften. "Then clarify it in writing. And do so with an understanding of the litigation hold now in effect." The security rep shifted in his chair. "There is a hold." Nina nodded once. "As of this morning." The HR manager looked uncomfortable, which was the closest thing to victory I had felt all day. After the meeting, we returned to Ava's office. It was the first time I had stepped inside. It smelled faintly of cedar and expensive paper. A framed photo sat on her bookshelf, not of people, but of a cramped garage workspace with a hand-drawn sign that read, "Harbor Line," written in marker. The origin story she never told in interviews. Ava stared at it for a moment. "I forgot I kept that," she said. Nina checked her phone, then looked up. "Gordon is calling an executive committee session," she said. "He is trying to outrun this." Ava's jaw tightened. "Let him run." I leaned against the doorframe, feeling the day in my bones. "What about the rumors?" I asked quietly. "If they start saying I'm sleeping with my boss, my career is done, even if we win." Ava's eyes met mine. The look was sharp, then softened into something like apology. "We do not give them details," she said. "We give them facts. The tracker, the payments, the outside firm, the disclosure. We keep the story where it belongs." Nina nodded. "Control the center. Do not chase the edges." My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Mrs. Delgado. "Mia is happy." A man in a suit asked which car you drive. I told him nothing. "Call me when you can." My stomach dropped. I showed it to Ava and Nina. Ava's face went cold. "They followed you to her house." Nina's voice sharpened. "That is intimidation." Ava grabbed her phone. "Ethan, call Mrs. Delgado. Tell her to keep the doors locked. Tell her if anyone returns, she calls the police." My hands shook as I dialed. Mrs. Delgado answered immediately. "Elena," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "lock the doors. Do not speak to anyone. If anyone comes back, call the police." "Honey," she replied, calm and fierce, "the doors are locked. The soup is hot. Mia is building a fort so tall it might touch heaven. I will call if I see anyone." The word heaven made my throat tighten. "Thank you," I managed. "I meant what I said," she replied. "You do what you have to do." I ended the call and stared at my phone, feeling anger rise in a clean, sharp line. They had stepped into my daughter's orbit. That changed the shape of my fear. Ava's voice cut through, controlled but tight. "They want you to panic," she said. I looked up. I'm already there. Ava stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that I could feel her presence, steadying the space. "Then we do not give them the satisfaction," she said quietly. "We keep moving." Nina's phone rang. She listened, face unreadable, then hung up. "Audit is requesting immediate access to vendor payment logs," she said. "That means someone on the board is nervous." Ava exhaled slowly. "Good." Outside Ava's office window, the city kept going. Cars moved. People walked under umbrellas like nothing was happening. Inside, my life felt like it was balanced on paper and plastic, and the thin line between calm and collapse. Ava turned to Nina. "Send the disclosure about Northline and Redwood to the full board," she said. "Not just the committee." Nina nodded. "Already drafted." Ava's gaze shifted to me. "We pick up Mia now," she said. "She does not stay in one place all day." I nodded, throat tight. "Yeah." We gathered our things, the binder, the drives, the bagged tracker. As we stepped into the hallway, I caught Ava's reflection in the glass. Her chin was lifted, shoulders squared, eyes forward. The CEO, everyone knew. But when she looked at me just for a breath, the hardness eased. "We keep it clean," she said softly. I nodded. "We keep it real." Ava did not smile. She simply walked beside me toward the elevator, and for the first time that day, my fear felt less like a cage and more like fuel. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, and the lobby air hit us with the sterile chill of polished stone and recycled ventilation. Ava walked beside me with the binder tucked close. Nina, a step behind, phone pressed to her ear as she spoke in short, precise phrases. Outside, the streets had dried into dark streaks where the floodwater had been. The city looked ordinary again, which made the knot in my chest feel even less reasonable, like fear was something only I could see. Ava climbed into the passenger seat without a word. Nina slid into the back, still talking. I pulled out of the garage and headed toward Mrs. Delgado's street, keeping my hand steady on the wheel. "Any cars behind us?" Ava asked quietly, eyes on the side mirror. "I don't see one," I said. We turned the corner, and Mrs. Delgado's house came into view, porch light on, even though it was daytime. A small signal that she was alert. I parked and got out. The front door opened before I reached the steps. Mia burst out like a rocket braid bouncing stuffed rabbit clutched in one fist. "Daddy!" She hit my legs with a hug that almost knocked me back. I lifted her, held her tight, breathed in the smell of soup and crayons on her hair. Mrs. Delgado stood behind her. Arms crossed, expression calm but hard around the eyes. He came back once she said to me, voice low, "Same suit, same smile." I told him I didn't know you. He tried to look past me into the house. Ava stepped onto the porch. Did he say who he was? Mrs. Delgado looked Ava up and down, then decided. He said he was from your company. Security, he claimed. But security doesn't ask a retired nurse what car a single dad drives. Nina ended her call and tucked her phone away. Did you get his name? I didn't ask. Mrs. Delgado replied. I told him if he didn't leave, I would call the police. He left. Mia looked between us, picking up the tension like a radio signal. Are we going home now? Yes, I said immediately. We're going home. Mrs. Delgado reached out and smoothed Mia's braid. You behaved like a champion, she told her. Mia grinned. I built a fort. Of course you did, Mrs. Delgado said, then looked at me. Ethan, you keep your doors locked. You hear me? I hear you, I said. Ava crouched to Mia's level. Thank you for letting us borrow your dad for work today, she said gently. Mia leaned in, whispering loudly, Did you win? Ava's throat moved as she swallowed. We made it harder for people to lie. Mia accepted that like it was the most sensible thing in the world. Okay. On the drive home, Mia chatted about soup and forts and a cat Mrs. Delgado swore she did not own. I listened, nodding at the right times while Ava stared out the window, the binder still held close. Nina sat behind us, typing on her phone with her chin lifted, as if she could keep the world back by refusing to bow her head. That night, after Mia fell asleep with her rabbit tucked under her chin, Ava sat at my kitchen table again. The same table where ketchup had dried into faint stains and crayons still rolled under the edge of the placemat. Nina had left hours ago with the tracker bagged and logged, headed to file it the way she filed everything, with proof and paper trails and no room for anyone to rewrite reality. Ava and I stayed quiet, tired down to the bone. They followed you to her house, Ava said, voice low. I stared at the dark window over the sink. They followed my kid. Ava's hand found the edge of the table, fingers curling. That changes everything. It already changed, I replied. I just didn't want to admit it. Ava looked at me for a long moment. Her gaze dropped to my hands, then rose again. You don't have to do this, she said. Not if it breaks you. I shook my head. I'm already in it. I don't get to pretend I'm not. Ava's eyes glistened, and she blinked slowly, holding herself together the way she always did. Then we keep the line, she whispered. The line I echoed. Ava nodded once. Facts only. Proof only. No distractions. I thought of the rumor Sam had warned me about, the kind of story that could swallow everything else. I felt my face heat in the dark, not from shame, but from the fury of being used like a prop. Ava leaned forward slightly. Ethan, she said, I will not let them turn you into this. I met her gaze. And I won't let them turn you into a headline. For the first time that day, her shoulders eased. She stood, walked around the table, and rested her hand lightly on my arm. The touch was brief, steady, and careful, like a promise made without a spotlight. 6 months later, the Harbor Line Auditorium smelled like fresh coffee and new carpet. Cameras lined the aisle. Employees packed the rose badges, clipped phones held low, eyes bright with the kind of attention that meant they knew they were watching a moment that would be repeated in hallways for years. Ava stood at the podium in a tailored maternity dress, her belly unmistakable, now no longer something she could hide behind a blazer. The stage lights caught the curve and made it look like a declaration. Behind her, the company logo glowed on the screen. In the front row, I sat with Mia on my knee. She wore a white shirt that said "Big Sister" in training in block letters. She did not understand quarterly earnings, but she understood applause. She clapped with both hands like she meant it. Ava's gaze swept the room. When it found us, it held for a beat longer than necessary. "Our numbers are up," Ava said, voice clear, steady, no tremor. "But I want to be careful about what we call success." People leaned in. Even the cameramen stopped shifting. Ava rested both hands on the podium. "We can build products that save time, save money, save lives. But we cannot do that if we are afraid of the truth. We cannot do that if we punish people for asking questions." A murmur moved through the room, agreement and relief tangled together. The board chair seat was empty. Gordon Vale had resigned 3 weeks after audit began pulling vendor logs, and external counsel started asking why a virtual office address had received so many payments. The official press release called it a personal decision. The subpoena that arrived later did not. Ava continued, voice calm. "I'm still here because people chose integrity over convenience." Her eyes flicked to Nina in the side aisle, standing with arms folded, expression unreadable, the closest thing to a smile at the corner of her mouth. "And I'm still here," Ava added, "because someone stood next to me when it would have been easier to step back." Her gaze found mine again. Heat rose in my throat, tight and sudden. Mia leaned into my chest and whispered, "That's you." I kissed the top of her head. "Yeah," I whispered back, "that's us." That evening, the house felt different. Not because the walls changed, though they had. The broken oak was gone from the yard, replaced by a clean patch of soil and a young sapling supported by stakes. Inside, the master bedroom held a new bed, wider and sturdier, the kind that did not make you feel like you had to fold yourself smaller to fit. Mia ran down the hallway in socks, laughing, chasing her rabbit in circles until she flopped onto the living room rug and declared herself tired. Ava stood in the doorway, watching her hand resting on her belly, a soft look on her face that made my chest ache. "She's fast," Ava said. "She's unstoppable," I replied. Ava turned toward me, eyes tired but bright. "This place feels real." "It is," I said. Ava stepped closer, and for once there were no cameras, no board members, no emails that could detonate a life. Just a quiet house, a child sleeping in the next room, and the steady sound of someone breathing beside you. Ava's voice dropped. "Remember when I said your bed was small?" I nodded. "I remember." She rested her forehead against my shoulder for a moment, then looked up. It was. I laughed quietly. Still worked. Ava's hand slid into mine, fingers warm. "It worked," she agreed. "If you've been listening along, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what you would have done in Ethan or Ava's position. And if you want more stories like this, please like and subscribe.